got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You gotta sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You gotta shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout, oh Lord. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You gotta dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you got to dance. Oh, you got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 And you gotta cry. You got to cry when the Spirit says cry. You got to cry when the Spirit says cry. When the Spirit says cry, you got to cry. Oh, you got to cry when the Spirit says cry. 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 And you gotta do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Oh, it's great to have Heather Grove at the piano once again. Thank you, Heather. Oh, you gotta do. I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa, glad to see you and to be together this morning. Used to be that Labor Day weekend would be a light Sunday. I don't know about you, but as I was growing up and being shaped by the values and behaviors of my family and community, I absorbed the message that to be a good person means to be doing, particularly for the sake of others. And to put this in perspective, I feel like a sloth compared to my parents and a number of my siblings. I was raised within the Catholic edition of the Calvinist Protestant Puritan work ethic that emphasized hard work and frugality, an ideal that our nation absorbed in its childhood, too. and that therefore still threads through many of our lives, religion or no. This Sunday morning of Labor Day weekend, we do honor the origins of Labor Day in its celebration of labor unions and the power of people banding together to ensure the well-being of all, feeling extra important at the moment. And this could in fact be a day when we celebrated the legacy of UUCM's own labor organizer, folk singer, storyteller, and poet Utah Phillips. But that service is going to come later. This morning, we focus rather on the work ethic part of this and on not laboring by asking, what about when the Spirit says, don't do? When that still small voice in us says, don't do, just be for a blessed minute. In other words, what about when our well-being and our ability to serve invite us to prioritize a Sabbath, a regular ceasing of our usual frantic doing so that we can keep ourselves refreshed and growing and anchored in the deep ideals, in the courageous self-awareness, in the transformative values that guide our actions and that lead us toward wholeness, those things that matter. So to beckon us in on a Sabbath morning, an invitation from UU minister, the Reverend John Gibb Millspaw, now living in San Diego, offered this morning by Renee and Ryan Fonbuena.
Leave aside the little thoughts that distract you from the depths of your soul, for this is a holy place, and now is a holy time.
Join with the others in this room, this community of seekers, and together let us find our Sabbath.
Thank you. And Barbara Johnson offers our land acknowledgement this morning.
Good morning. This sacred land, this Nisanan land where we are at this moment, knows Sabbath too. The acorn rests for months before it sprouts. Every seed does so. Some animals living on Nisanan land sleep for long stretches of time. As we contemplate the vision of the Nisanan people successfully recovering their rich cultural heritage and land, may we remember that all of life, all movement, has energy when it's entwined with rest. With this basket of black oak acorns, we pledge our ongoing support to the Nevada City Rancheria Nisanan tribe and to their sacred contribution to this land that is theirs.
Thank you, Barbara. Sabbath is in part about tuning into our own inner light, and it's in this spirit that we sing and bless our children on their way to Kids Connection, affirming their inner light as well as our own at the same time with this little light of mine. Like that. For the sake of tuning into our own and each other's inner light, let's release ourselves from the insistent sound of our cell phones. And if you're not sure whether yours is off, now's a great time just to pull it out and check. And let's welcome each other. Welcome the people that are around us or the people that we notice aren't being greeted yet. And as always, sensitive to how that person may or may not want to be greeted. Look for the cues. And let us invite each other into this experience that we co-create together each time we gather on a Sunday morning. I invite you to say hello warmly to welcome one another.
In the relentless busyness of life, we've forgotten the rhythm between work and rest. Our culture assumes action and accomplishment. Doing something, anything, is better than nothing. To succeed, we cannot rest. Confused by the belief that good things come only with unceasing, tireless effort, we keep going like a car on a freeway, even can't pull over, even if it's in trouble. The Chinese symbol for busy is made of two characters. The first is heart, and the other one is killing. How did we get lost in a world of striving and grasping without joy and renewal? We have forgotten the Sabbath. The Sabbath can be a single day, for example, in the Jewish tradition, Saturday, or the Christian tradition, Sunday. Or it can be any moment when we pause. Instead of doing more, we do it differently. It's time for life-giving rest and nourishment. It is a time to remember who we are, what we know, to taste the Spirit, a healing time. The Buddhists would say it's time to take refuge as our modern life seduces us away from quiet. It might not mean no work, perhaps just work with more ease and joy. The Sabbath is both a specific practice and a starting point for conversation about the forgotten necessity of rest. I am Carol Nimick, the Worship Associate assisting Reverend Kevin, and I welcome you, if you're in this room, the overflow room, or Zoom, or watching in time on YouTube, welcome to this Sabbath moment, to this pause, to this stepping out of our daily routines to be here, so we may reflect, renew, and be. May we begin to remember the necessity of rest, the necessity of Sabbath.
And oh, here we are once again, many of us, torn between savoring the day and saving the day. We need both, of course. Or maybe you're feeling a bit frozen in response to it all. This morning, in the midst of hearts breaking yet again for the killing of more school children in a church this time, and for the deep disconnection of another lonely teenager, In the midst of, yes, heartache for an entire people and more in Gaza, starved of food, of rights, of sustenance of any kind, starved of protection, and in the end, of life. In the midst, yes, of relentless public demonizing and the terrorizing disappearing of immigrants and citizens and loved ones. In the midst, yes, of our own rage and fear and grasping to hang on to our compassionate humanity, to focus our resistance in ways that might possibly matter, to be, maybe for once, frighteningly courageous and yet still loving, without selling our soul or selling out our values, trying to have faith in our resilience, even when our energy wearies. In the midst of everything, we light a candle of compassion, resistance, and resilience to at least acknowledge the weight and the significance of it all, to honor open-eyed our need for hope, and to affirm our shared commitment to a more compassionate, a more sustainable, and a more just world. It's to these ends that we lean into the spirit of Sabbath. It's in this spirit that we light this candle. Let's move in by starting close in, by noticing our own breathing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love when I breathe in. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe. I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, when I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Just breathe.
We Gather on the Sabbath Morn by Burton D. Carley. We gather on the Sabbath morn to worship in spirit and truth, to raise a joyful noise to the eternal mystery, to reconfirm our covenant, to seek wisdom in love, to strengthen our commitment to the common good. We come from many paths to explore which is hidden, to consider the ways of our hearts, to confess how we have stumbled, to heal what is broken. We assemble in the effort to quicken our compassion and mercy, to deepen our understanding, to renew our courage, to remember who we are. Thus do we celebrate the grace and the gift of life and practice our fate. Some thoughts on taking a Sabbath. On this weekend, when labor and laborers are recognized, I'd like to speak to no labor and no work. We may call this taking time out. It may also be described as taking a Sabbath. Whatever the words, rest is essential. It is a marker. If I were lost in the forest, I would need a marker to find my way home. When overwhelmed or confused, quiet time is my go-to remedy, the first thing I look for in my medicine cabinet. It brings me home, back to myself, back to my center. With quiet reflection and lack of busyness, I return to my heart. I remember I am enough, and I am reminded of all the blessings that fill my life. Gratitude returns, and sometimes delight. Sabbath time is rarely a full day. More often, it's a few hours, a walk, and sometimes just a moment with a few breaths. Anything that gives a visceral, life-giving, renewing experience. It's time off the wheel or a break from the spinning plates. The Sabbath is permission to say yes to rest. Sabbath is not the time for catching up on emails and errands. Something deeper arises when I let go and move into stillness and silence. I listen and sometimes hear or feel a presence bigger, more beautiful, and true. This presence invites me to slow down even more, soften the edges of striving, and truly be with life as it is. It involves my attention and mindfulness. I feel as though I've entered a bit of the sacred realm. Sometimes feelings of shame and guilt arise when I want to stop and rest. I'm programmed to think more is better. I must keep doing. Inner voices scream at me not to stop. It's hard, actually, to still my impulses. I found some tools to break these beliefs and enter in Sabbath silence. One is to consecrate a space with flowers and candles, as we have here, consecrating this space at our altar. Another is to mark the beginning and end of Sabbath times with mindful breaths, a bell, or a light gong. At Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh periodically jingles a mindfulness bell. Upon hearing the bell, everyone stops and takes 3 silent, mindful breaths. The Muslims are called to prayer 5 times a day. All work ceases and ancient words spoken from centuries arise from their hearts. We can also designate a common act to serve as a Sabbath pause. When a hand touches a doorknob, maybe at a stoplight before we eat, these times become reminders to take 3 breaths. My willingness to stop and rest, I notice, depends on what I think I'll feel in the quiet, for I'll be coming face to face with myself. When I believe life is good, I know I'll taste goodness. I look forward to entering the silence. At other times, it's scary to be silent. Will I be overwhelmed by my negative thoughts, fear, loneliness? Instead of being still, I pencil the blanks of my calendar with tasks and errands. However, I know a bamboo reed must be hollow for the wind of spirit to blow through it. I'm aware creation springs from emptiness, and space must be available for love to be present. Silence and stillness are essential. The more I'm willing to slow, simplify, stop, I find I delve deeper into the well of grace. I like this to skipping stones. A thrown stone may skim the surface, making numerous hops, but it barely gets wet. Another may hit the water, sink, and disappear, but has reached the water's depth. Though in my mind I don't want to disappear, I'm aware speed only keeps me safe, and it also keeps me malnourished. I want to slow down and sink deeply to find refuge. Observing a complete silence without any talking, a conversation with another, or the conversation with my own inner chattering, is another practice for which I strive. If a voice, words, a thought arise, I try to refocus on my breath and let the words disappear and the silence return. Silent walks, not only quiet but also without a purpose, provide a Sabbath moment, a space for my soul to catch up. Remembering all of nature takes Sabbath breaks, periods of rest, hibernation, dormancy is reassuring. A seed's strength and hardiness are maximized, and animals' energy increased. Would this not apply to me as well? Sabbaths aren't just a you ought, as they may have been in their stricter Jewish or Christian origins, but clearly they are a part of the rhythmic cycles of life that sustain us. To be in, to step out, to be engrossed, then detached, to work, then rest. With our beating hearts and pulsating lungs, we are rhythmic beings needing to observe the rhythms in our lives. The practice of Sabbath is to restore us, to be life-enhancing. Sabbath begins when I turn down the lights, turn off my computer and phone, and I've closed the curtain to the familiar workings of the day. Sabbath also calls on surrender to unfinished work. If I stop only when the work is done, I won't stop. Work never seems complete. The Sabbath liberates me from having to be finished and reminds me to delight in the work I have done. Prayer is an entrance to Sabbath. It's a time when I close my eyes for a moment and let my mind rest in my heart. Being grateful is another practice of Sabbath. Giving thanks before a meal, upon rising, going to sleep, moments throughout the day, allows me to step out of busyness, pause, and inhabit a greater depth as I remember the blessings in my life I may have forgotten with the activities of daily living. The Sabbath is sanctuary time. I make myself available to the insights that arise only in stillness, the time to live, love, give thanks, rest, delight. Take a Sabbath. The time is now. We do not have a long way to go before we sleep, till rest calls us. It is calling now.
Return to the home of the
Wayne Muller wrote that prayer is like a portable Sabbath. When we close our eyes for just a moment and let the mind rest. As Carol noted, like the Muslims who stop to pray 5 times a day, like the Angelus in the Catholic tradition, we can be stopped by a sunset, a meal, and we can pray or take that moment. Something close to the heart and simple. It's been said that there are 4 urgings or impulses toward prayer, whether we use that word or not. Help, or please, thanks, oops, and wow. Help, thanks, oops, wow. The experience and pull beneath each of these forms of reaching out, they come whether or not we have a sense of any to whom or to what we are reaching. Some of us know exactly where our prayers are directed. Where our spoken or unspoken prayers are aimed is more vague for some of us. And some of us, especially those of us who are not likely to think in terms of prayer at all, find these expressions of help, thanks, oops, and wow arising within us, and we release them into the wide and extraordinary universe without attachment. As we prepare for this weekly ritual of honoring the joys and the sorrows in our hearts, the ones that we hold privately but acknowledge collectively together, I invite you to consider these possible seeds for your Sabbaths. Notice for a moment about what or whom is something in you crying out, help, or please, in response to something you know you cannot fix or control. What is your worry and your hope, your help, your please? Notice for a moment about what or whom is something in you singing out or could be singing out a thank you for a gift you recognize as a gift, a goodness, a deed, a beauty, a close call, a not to be taken for granted blessing that has come your way. What is your thanks? Notice for a moment about what or whom is something in you realizing an important oops, a harm caused, intended or no, or an apology where amends or where seeking forgiveness might be the needed path. What's your oops? And notice for a moment about what or whom is something in you unable to contain a wow. What extraordinary, awesome, astonishing, miraculous reality has graced your life and taken your breath away lately? What's your wow? In light of what you may have noticed and all else that you hold with care in your heart today, I invite you, if you're on Zoom, to type into the chat some of what you carry, or an O or a 0 to mark something that won't get named but that's still important to you. If you're in the room, there's a chance to take a stone here from the table and to place it in the bowl of water. letting the stone represent all that you hold, and the bowl of water, all that holds you. I invite us to hold each other in the quiet, in the music, in the internal focus. As we learn, I invite you to echo. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. 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 Listen to heartache, listen to grief, listen to heartache, listen to grief. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Listen to gladness, listen to joy, listen to gladness, listen to joy. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Listen to anger, listen to hurt, listen to anger, listen to hurt. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Listen to beauty, listen to grace, listen to beauty, listen to grace. Be still and breathe. Be still and be. Be still and breathe. Be listen to you, listen to me, listen to you, listen to me. Be still and breathe, be still and be. Be still and breathe, be still and be. Be still and breathe, be still and be. Be still and breathe, be still and breathe, just breathe. From that quiet space, you might be ready for a quiet stretch. Carol has spoken beautifully of Sabbath, which includes stretching, apparently. The idea of Sabbath or Shabbat or Shabbos originates in Judaism, as you may know, in response to a commandment named in the Hebrew Bible to, quote, remember the Sabbath, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is Sabbath. In the Jewish tradition, Sabbath unto the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any manner of work. It is modeled after the biblical creation story of the story of God creating the world, working hard at it for 6 days, and then resting on the seventh. I've heard Shabbat or Sabbath framed by several rabbis as the defining element of Judaism. More than anything else, it's the Sabbath that is unique and central to Jewish identity and practice. In its most conservative form, Judaism takes the not working concept so seriously as to not allow cooking, washing clothes, knitting, writing, or erasing, boating, striking a match, caring for the garden, playing a musical instrument, moving an object more than 6 feet, or even flipping a light switch. The basic idea of taking a day off, this Jewish idea of taking a Sabbath, was scoffed at by the ancient Greek philosophers. But the point of Sabbath is about more than taking time off, and about more than restrictions, and about more than resting, although resting is an important element. The Hebrew word we know as Shabbat means to cease. More than rest, it's to cease. It's about stopping the usual busyness or whatever it is that needs to stop in your life in order for you to tune in to something deeper. That's what needs ceasing. Rabbi Chaim Donin said that the Calvinist Puritans, our ancestors, our religious ancestors, they came closest, he says, to living out the Sabbath with the strictness of Orthodox Judaism, except that the Puritans did it with a severe sense of gloom. While the Sabbath is intended to be meaningfully joyful, restorative, all those restrictions on working are meant to remind one that we are not in control, that we are not perfect, that we can't do it all. And that knowledge, plus the experience of ceasing, is meant to be joyfully liberating. The not doing is meant to be liberating, not limiting or dour. Just as there's a distinction between freedom from and freedom for, there is a distinction between ceasing from and ceasing for, resting from and resting for. The point is to tune out in order to tune in. The point is to tune out in order to tune in. Rabbi Dunnan wrote that the Shabbat, Sabbath, is about more than a vacation from work. It's about resuscitation. That sounds about right, doesn't it? Resuscitation. The point, he wrote, is to take Sabbath in order to be as nourished, as fed, and as delighted as we're meant to be. Your life is not a problem to be solved, he notes, but a gift to be opened. A gift to be opened. The Sabbath is meant to help us open the gift of ourselves, to restore body and soul. So our invitation this morning is to consider finding a way to build in or engage anew, maybe, the practice of Sabbath in your life. Goodness knows so many of us could really use it. Carol offered several wonderful approaches, and as Carol noted, a meaningful Sabbath doesn't need to be a full day, although that's great. A partial day, an hour, and for some of us, even a minute set aside is a place to start. The point is to do a Sabbath, to engage a Sabbath regularly, to cease regularly, and to let our attention turn gently to what matters, to what is more important than what drives our busyness. Once again, here's a sermon to self, of course. It may help to mark the start and the end, as Carol noted, with a small ritual, the lighting of a candle, the uttering of a phrase, 3 deep breaths, a sound of a bell, a song. Maybe your Sabbath will be to notice the help, the thanks, the oops, or the wow of the moment. Maybe it will be for what you know but are not allowing yourself to know yet. Maybe it will be to have a conversation with your heart, remembering to let your heart talk once in a while too. Maybe it will be to notice beauty, connection, the earth, the sky, the non-human life that shares your home or your yard. Maybe it will be for a conversation with God or the divine or the power that you know. Maybe it will be simply to breathe and be. And it may help to know that having some resistance to this practice is normal. As Carol said, it can look like guilt, should be doing something, but it can also look like boredom or discomfort. Resistance is normal. But so too is not having any resistance at all. That's normal too. So the question we leave you with is, what is, or what could, your Sabbath be? Years ago, a rabbi friend gave me this Havdalah candle. It is the beautiful braided candle lit to mark the end of Shabbat in Jewish tradition. The braiding symbolizes, among other things, unity and wholeness, several aspects, 3 aspects of the soul, one's connection to the divine light, rekindled by the Sabbath itself is the idea. This candle has always felt somehow too beautiful, too special, too sacred to light. Plus, I wanted to be respectful of the Jewish tradition from which it comes. But I think I'm going to light it this morning, even though it's not the end of the Jewish Shabbat on a Sunday morning. I'll light it to honor the unity and the wholeness that we long for, to honor the Sabbaths that you will make, on the way to the home of your soul. I invite you into your Sabbaths. Be still and breathe. 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 Breathe still and breathe. Be 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 still and breathe.
It is in giving that we receive. Our weekly financial gifts support the workings, doings, and the being of our UUCM community. 50% of the offering is shared with a local nonprofit. This month, the Share the Play partner is the Bear Yuba Land Trust, which preserves and protects natural, working, and cultural lands of the Bear and Yuba River watersheds. Lands that provide endless opportunities to stroll, enjoy, and have Sabbath experiences. Thank you for your generous support. We dedicate these offerings to our UUCM community and to the local protected land, so both may sustain, nourish, connect, and inspire us. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, and thanks to those of you who have crossed the threshold into this space for the first time. I want to always honor the courage it takes to enter a new community, a new building, without being entirely certain of what will be. Heather, thanks for holding us so beautifully with the music today. Carol, for really beautiful reflections on Sabbath. And calming reflections on Sabbath. Yeah, thank you. To Renee and Ryan and Barbara for reading as part of the service. To Gwen for serving as our lay pastoral care member this morning. And so you see some of the people to thank, right, after the service. You've seen them up front, but there's some people behind the scenes here too. Steve and Paul this morning on AV. Yeah. Eileen online, Linda Siska, who did a beautiful setting and who is also up with Cheryl with our young ones for Kids Connection. To our greeters, where are you greeters? You saw them coming in, most of you, Jim and Lori and Carl and Connie. Thank them when you see them, please. And on refreshments, Michael Bankston is such a mainstay for our refreshments. Thank you, Michael. Where are you? Yeah, thank you. And as well as Katz today, who's also another mainstay refreshments person. Did I catch everybody? Eileen online, thank you as well. Next Sunday, September, as we enter our new theme, it will be a Sunday where you're invited to bring water from home or from a place that's special to you, known as a water ceremony, or sometimes called a water communion. So we'll have water for those who don't bring water too. But if that occurs to you, bring a small container of water next Sunday. There's a humanism discussion group this week, singing meditation on Thursday. Come and have a Sabbath for an evening of singing. UU 101 next Sunday. For those of you who are new or just kind of curious about this whole UU thing, we'll meet after the service. And there's a parent cafe, a cafe for the parents of our young ones, special next Sunday. Always check the website, please, and to find out more of what's going on. It's a moving reality all the time. I invite us to close. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. You've been sitting a good while. As we offer our closing words, we'll blend it a little bit with Be Still and Breathe.
Is your candle okay? John Gibb Millspaugh's invitation to carry with us as we close our service.
Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe.
Leave aside the little thoughts that distract you from the depths of your soul.
Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe.
For this is a holy place, and now is a holy time.
Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe.
Join with the others in this room, this community of seekers, and week by week together, let us find our Sabbath for the sake of everything.
Be still and breathe. Be still and breathe. Be still
carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
We'll see you next Sunday for our water ceremony and more. And if you're here in the building, please connect and join in conversation, and there are refreshments down the hall in the back. We'll see you soon.